The world of fear and hunger is full of creatures that have been morphed and disfigured by the influence of the eldritch beings known as Old Gods. Within the Termina Festival of Fear and Hunger 2, we see these transformations showcased firsthand to 12 of the 14 main characters who were contestants in the Battle Royale Termina Festival. This is done through a process called Moonscorching, which is attributed to the influence of the Old Trickster Moon God, Rher. After prolonged exposure to the Old God's influence, the contestants will become moonscorched and contort into monstrous beings which embody their darkest characteristics, past traumas, or repressed feelings. Each moonscorched form contains deep lore relating to its respective character, and I'll be diving into all 12 we see in-game to explain what they represent. First, I want to discuss the nature of moonscorching itself. Throughout the city of Brehevel, we see many examples of beings which have been exposed to Rher's Moonscorch, also called Moonlight Cancer, which is evident from their grotesque features. Moonscorching heavily affects the faces and bodies of individuals, as we see with the villagers and bobbies, and Daan observes the flesh of the victims appears to be burned but also affected by hypothermia. And some contestants believe the villagers to have been affected by radiation before the game's start. However, as the Moonscorch progresses, the victims become much more monstrous and maddened, eventually outright attacking anyone on sight. It is easily surmised the affliction isn't a simple sickness, but indeed something otherworldly. This is confirmed with the moonscorching of the main characters, who morph into monstrous beings representing their inner selves and darkest desires. If you progress to the morning of day 4, the festival will end, and we can see Moonscorch occur firsthand, where the player experiences unimaginable pain as something primal writhes inside them and bursts through their body. In the story, Henryk and Abella are most likely the first Moonscorch contestants you will come across, as their conditions for doing so are linked. If you go to the mayor's manor before initiating the cutscene with Abella in Tunnel 7 by the woodsman's shack, she will Moonscorch into the colossal Chaugnar. This form is a stark contrast to Abella's normal appearance, and the only remaining semblance is from her overalls that the beast still has on. Chaugnar is a hulkish, muscular figure with an alien-like head and an elephant trunk, which it uses in battle through the Doomsday Trumpet ability, which will drain the player's mind and cause instant death if it hits multiple times. It has been theorized that the head of Chaugnar is actually the parasite of the woodsman, which has attached itself to Abella due to the parasite's appearance and the fact that Abella followed the path of the woodsman's shack to get to Tunnel 7. It may also be what caused her moonscorching to occur so early in the game, as Abella doesn't show any early signs of losing her mind or succumbing to Rher's influence. Chaugnar has an extremely masculine appearance and smashes through the walls of the bunker to attack the player, symbolizing how, as a mechanic, Abella is part of a male-dominated industry and may often feel her femininity is damaged due to this, as well as being one of the physically strongest characters in the game. She is insecure to her strength and the possible damage she could inflict on others. Many have surmised this to being a metaphor for Abella being an elephant in a china shop. Additionally, the name of Chaugnar is named after Chaugnar, an eldritch elephant-esque deity that is part of the Cthulhu mythos. If Abella is recruited into your party, or if you fail to break Henryk out of his trance at the mayor's manor, you will moonscorch into the gentleman on day 1 evening. He takes the mantle of Mayor of Brehevel and will be found in the dining room of the manor. The gentleman stands out from the other Moonscorch contestants as he is both non-hostile and is capable of having a full conversation with the player about food, which is fitting with Henryk's profession as a chef. Looking at his appearance, the gentleman keeps the same clothes as Henryk, but his face is contorted in a manner similar to that of the Moonscorch villagers. Despite his noble name, the gentleman soon shows the true nature of Henryk, which is that of a sexualizing womanizer who puts on airs to be more gentlemanly than he actually is. The fact that he assumes the role of mayor shows how Henryk desires a position of superiority and to be respected by others. We also see Henryk's sexualizing tendencies when encountered at the train, where he will objectify Abella while she is bent over working on the engine, which angers her. The gentleman will invite the player to sit at the table and discuss the dishes present, all of which are highly suggestive despite him trying to give them grander meaning. If the player refuses or wants to cut the dinner short, the gentleman will become aggressive, saying the player should feel honored to get a seat with him and will initiate a battle. When asked about family at the table, the gentleman quickly dismisses the player, telling them they don't talk about family here, hinting to Henryk's troubled past with his family. His true nature is shown even further, as on the night of day 1, he will kidnap Marina and hold her captive within the manor, where you will need to rescue her. Samarie will initially be found at the Brehevel church, and after the morning of day 1, she will be in the alternate Rher dimension within the church's basement, where she will go mad and moonscorch into the twisted Dysmorphia. This form has a grotesque body and face, which has been stretched into the shape of a sun. Due to Samarie possessing a radiating soul, Dysmorphia repeats that she is radiating with this form, despite her macabre appearance, which relates to this form representing the dysmorphia that Samarie has felt for her whole life and with her obsessive feelings of Marina. Before the game's events, Samarie was used in the Ninth Circle of the Vatican City, a hidden area that uses the bodies of gifted children with occult skills in a grim ritual in order to try and commune with the old gods, even though it has never been successful. This has led to Samarie's body, and presumably mind, deteriorating at an advanced rate. During her time in the Vatican City, Samarie became obsessed with feelings of love for Marina, despite Marina never having met her or even knowing who she is. When talked to in battle, Dysmorphia will repeat that she is radiating, and that this new form is part of her metamorphosis into a moth. This symbolizes the dysmorphic feeling she embodies deep down, as she wants to break free from her current limitations and become a new, better version of herself, but fails to see that her Moonscorch form is an abomination made of her negative and harmful feelings towards herself. Marina's Moonscorch form, Cocoon, is by far the most complex and symbolic, as it embodies Marina's inner insecurities, identity, and traumatic past. Being born in Prhevel to a dark priest father, Marina was born male, but her mother covered this up and raised Marina as female due to male heirs being forced to follow the grueling path of dark priesthood. Marina's father always held discontent for her, which resulted in her harboring strong negative feelings towards him, which are shown through Cocoon. In this form, Marina's body is flattened and contorted, having become the host for a parasitic cocoon growing out of her, which is leashed to her neck and is controlling her to attack the player. From talking in battle, it appears the cocoon contains the remains of her deceased father, who always loomed over Marina and wanted her to be his male heir to be used for blood magic rituals. The Moonscorching has morphed Marina's body into a twisted version which has grown new limbs, and her head is now sticking out between her legs, which symbolizes her gender dysphoric feelings from her trans identity, in addition to the phallic form of the cocoon, which is growing where her head should be. In an interesting parallel, Cocoon also has a callback to Samarie's Dysmorphia Moonscorch form, as Samarie talks about her new form being part of her metamorphosis into a moth, which specifically used cocoons to do so. While not confirmed, the design of Cocoon bears a resemblance to the anima summon of Final Fantasy X, as it has a similar upper and lower body to its form. Levi's Moonscorch form, called the Weeping Scope, is a visceral embodiment of his trauma, PTSD, and sorrow from the tragic life he has led. The Weeping Scope can be seen sobbing both in the overworld and in battle, where it will shoot the player with its head that has been morphed into the barrel of a rifle. This symbolizes how Levi's mind has been warped from his trauma in war, and how he feels trapped in his role as a child soldier whose main purpose is to be used for killing. Having lost his mother due to an attack from his alcoholic father, Levi was forced to live in the Prhevel orphanage, where abuse continued from the dark priests that ran the place. Levi was then sold as a child soldier at the age of 13 and forced to be a sniper. He then developed a troubled relationship with substances due to his PTSD. Having fled the army, he returned to Prhevel as he didn't know where else to go. And similarly, the Weeping Scope can be found either running to or within the orphanage, as this was the starting point for much of Levi's traumatic experiences. The design of Levi's Moonscorch form is based off of the manga Judgement, whose main character is able to transform parts of his body into firearms, which bear a heavy resemblance to the head of the Weeping Scope. Caligura's Moonscorch form is fittingly a twisted and wretched creature that reflects his violent and nasty nature, and is appropriately named Monster. It disgustingly oozes poison, mucus, and slime, and resides in the dirty, toxic water of the sewers beneath Prhevel, ambushing the player at various locations. We find Caligura is infamous for his heinous crimes in the Mafia of the Vatican City, as he is recognized by multiple characters in the game, and his sadistic deeds have earned him the title Count Dragul. He is the only contestant that will attack and kill others unprovoked, and seems to take joy in the carnage, which is reinforced by him possessing a decrepit soul. He will also attempt to assault Abella if you sleep as her in the mayor's manor, further cementing his nature as a true monster, and his dialogue when Moonscorched will show this even further as he hurls gross requests at the party. Tanaka's Moonscorch form, Judgement, is easily the rarest Moonscorch to see in-game, as he has the most chances to die by enemies and NPCs throughout the story. It is also the most human-looking of the Moonscorch forms, as Tanaka's head and body are still very much the same. Judgment's form is directly linked to Tanaka's career as a salaryman for his family's business, the intense pressure and burden placed on him for being the heir to the company, and Tanaka's deep desires of wanting to win approval from and surpass his father. In battle, Judgement will talk in cliched motivational phrases, which he has heard countless times in his career, and he literally has an attack called glass ceiling, a term that refers to the barriers workers often encounter where they can see the next steps in their career but are held back due to a social or superficial barrier. The glass shards protruding from Judgment's arm and head are symbolic of Tanaka's deep desires of wanting to smash through his own limitations to become a more capable and competent version of himself, which he believes he has done through his Moonscorch form. The brace around Judgment's neck and shoulders forces its head to always be held high, mirroring how Tanaka must always be presentable and professional, as well as the literal burden he continuously bears on his shoulders. Lastly, the whip in his left hand has a double meaning, as it is a flagellation whip, which is used to inflict oneself with pain for self-discipline, and it shows the hard-working doctrine that was placed on Tanaka by his family. Daan's Moonscorch transformation is one of a kind, as he doesn't painfully morph into a twisted being like with the other contestants, but is instead turned into the next Pocketcat as the feline being possesses him. There are multiple factors as to why Daan may have been picked as the next in line for Pocketcat. First, we know that Pocketcat is a servant of the Trickster Moon God Rher, whose power is utilized to create the Termina festival of the game, and it seems that Pocketcat targets Daan specifically, which we can surmise is ultimately Rher's doing. Additionally, the fact that Daan possesses a blank soul without any discernible characteristics may be a reason why he is more susceptible to Pocketcat's influence. We see when Daan transforms that Pocketcat preys on those who are at their lowest, as he whispers in their ear and convinces them to take his mantle. Similarly, much of Daan's life has been influenced by the gods, as he lost his parents to a ritual of Sylvian and his fiancée and adoptive father to a ritual of sulfur. Both of these events may have made Daan of further interest to Pocketcat. Interestingly, Daan's transformation isn't limited to happening within the Termina festival, as with the other contestants. We see in Daan's B ending that he still feels despair for his life, and that he's considering more and more heavily to take Pocketcat up on his offer, showing that Rher's desire for Daan is much greater than just for the festival. We also know that Daan continues to search for answers about Sulfur and what happened to his fiancée and adoptive father. Rher despises humanity wanting to be on the same level as the old gods, as we saw when Pocketcat tried to stop the girl from becoming the god of fear and hunger in the first game. It could be that Daan has the potential to discover greater power, and Rher turns him into Pocketcat to eliminate this possibility. Olivia's Moonscorch transformation into the mechanical dance reflects how she and her disability are interchangeably perceived by others in the shadow of her twin sister Rayla, which she has had to live in for her entire life. The form of mechanical dance symbolizes how Olivia's wheelchair and disability are what people most identify with her, as her lower body has become a large, floating machine venting out toxic gas, and her face and upper body have lost all recognizability and prominent features, with her arms turning into long, protruding blades. Her floating movement showcases how Olivia desires to be able to move freely without the need of either legs or arms. Surprisingly, when asked what happened to her in battle, she will reply that she has always been this way, an abomination and monster, further cementing her negative feelings towards herself and her condition, and she will scream at the party to look away from her. The name Mechanical Dance personifies how Olivia felt her whole life, a shadow of her sister that is more mechanical than human due to her wheelchair, and must dance through life putting on smiles and acting as though it doesn't bother her. Mechanical Dance's machine body and appearance also draws an interesting similarity to the Machine God, who we find is actually Olivia's twin sister Rayla, exemplifying their connection and how Olivia feels less than her, as Rayla has become a god. Marcoh's Moonscorched form, Giant, is a colossal beast that embodies his inner guilt and fear of his own strength and violence. Giant rampages endlessly without reason as it clutches the body of a helpless figure in its large right hand. After having accidentally killed his opponent in the boxing ring under a mob boss's orders, Marcoh carried the immense burden of his sin as it ate him up from the inside. We see this reflected in the form of Giant, as his body barely resembles a human and is instead a twisted, animalistic form. This is how Marcoh truly perceives himself to be, and Giant is the true manifestation of his guilt once it became too much for him to bear. In battle, the only word it can muster is guilt, and no amount of talking or reason will work on the beast. Despite his past actions, Marcoh tries to do good to others, as we can see by him helping Olivia to acquire a wheelchair, and how he takes Tanaka under his wing to show him how to box and strengthen his resolve. Osa's Moonscorch into Mastermind is unique, as he is the only character not to scream in pain, and instead seemingly accepts his fate as he goes into a meditative stance. The Mastermind may seem like it has agency for a Moonscorch being, but it is actually the representation of Osa's fear of being controlled by external forces. Most of Osa's life has been guided by events outside of his control. As he grew up in the war-torn land of Abyssonia, his pursuits to gain power by channeling the old gods, and how Nasra guides him as the beheaded wizard item. The name Mastermind is how Osa truly wants to be, the one in control of his own life and events in the world. The form and dialogue of Mastermind is similar to the greater mumblers of the first Fear and Hunger game, as he will only mumble in battle, and the mumblers are beings warped by the darkness of the God of the Depths influence, mirroring how Osa is afraid of being controlled by the influence of the gods that he wants to gain dominion over. The head of Mastermind reinforces this, as it appears to be a mushroom-like fungus, which in the real world can be parasitic and take over its host's actions. In an interesting parallel, Mastermind can be seen meditating in the overworld, and will cast hurting on the player as they approach him, just like the Yellow Mages do in the original Fear and Hunger, who directly worship the god of destruction Gro-goroth and follow Nasra. This shows how Osa fears becoming upon a Nasra, like the Yellow Mages before him were. Karin's Moonscorched form of Valkyrie showcases the deep guilt she feels for profiting off of the wars she reports on and the justifications she has created to try and relieve herself of the heavy emotion. In Norse mythology, Valkyries carry the worthy souls of dead warriors to the afterlife of Valhalla, and as the name suggests, Karin sees herself in a similar way, as her success in her career as a journalist requires her to report on and profit from dead civilians and soldiers in war. This has led Karin to be burdened by this moral dilemma, as we see with her Valkyrie form, which carries deceased warriors on her back. But the body of Valkyrie is more akin to a vulture, which feasts on dead beings. In battle, Valkyrie will speak about how she is immortalizing the fallen warriors, who will live on forever in her memories. Capable of flight, we first can see Valkyrie flying above Brehevel towards the location of Deable's Island to hide alone, symbolic of the guilt she feels, and a presumed role of taking souls to an afterlife. Valkyrie's design is directly inspired by the artwork The Defense of Sampo by Ixeli Gallen Kalela, as we can see with the winged beast's appearance and how it carries soldiers on its back, just like with Valkyrie. Among the 14 contestants, Pav and August are the only two that do not currently have Moonscorch forms in-game. For Pav, this is due to him ultimately meeting his end either by the player or the Kaiser before the night of day 3. With August, if he doesn't confront the Kaiser, he will take matters into his own hands before Rher's influence can overtake him. Looking into the Moonscorched form of each contestant provides powerful insight to each character's true nature. Even though we see the eldritch influence of other old gods morph people and creatures through the Fear and Hunger series, Rher stands out as instead of twisting them into versions similar to himself, his moonlight reveals that which is hidden beneath, offering a glance at their inner subconsciousness. Thank you for watching, and to support the channel, please subscribe to get weekly Fear and Hunger lore videos.